Miss the Pandaria Classic, it's almost here, and we all want to know which tanks are going to make our raids go the smoothest, which tanks are going to let us go max damage without worrying about floor POV, and which tanks are going to guarantee us a clear through the raids and all the gold challenge modes too. To help us answer that question, I brought in resident tank expert Riani.
Hi, I'm Riani. I am the Wowhead Blood DK and Prot Warrior author. I also do a little bit of the YouTube stuff, a little bit of the Twitch stuff as well.
So Riani, what are a few major factors you're looking for in a tank and mop?
So in Miss Pandaria, it becomes very much a case of looking not only of how can you survive, but also how much offensive output can you do? How do you deal with certain big hitting abilities while still being able to self-sustain, and how you do that efficiently? Every single tank do get some form of active negation, but they are not all created equal.
Let's start our discussion with the new blood of tanking. And we've got to start with my favorite tank, the Brewmaster Monk. So I picked up Brewmaster earlier this week. I've already fallen in love. The rotation just honestly feels way better than any of the other tanks. Really, they have every single tool you need. You're great in 10 mans, 25 mans. What do you think about Brewmaster?
Brewmaster is definitely in an interesting spot. The moment you pick it up, you definitely feel like it was designed for another era of World of Warcraft. Constant abilities that you're pressing, you have constant AoEs around you, you have a lot of movements, and it really feels good to play. They do have a little bit of a higher skill ceiling, because if you do not keep up a lot of the active mitigation that you have, if you don't keep up Shuffle, if you don't keep up Elusive Brew, you're going to be lying down on the floor a lot. A good Brewmaster who can utilize your utilities well, who can play around Vengeance, who can use their cooldowns properly in order to soak big hits that you might not be supposed to soak, will be a very good addition to your raid, that's for sure.
So let's get to the second class in the new blood category, the technically old but new Guardian Druid. So with Guardian Druids, we could talk about how fun and easy they are to play compared to tanks like Brewmasters. Or more negatively, we can talk about the fact that I haven't seen a single Guardian Druid on the beta. But I really want to address the allegations I saw in one of your YouTube shorts that you're going to be maining Guardian Druid.
That is certainly allegations. I do not, under any circumstance, will be maining a Guardian Druid in this expansion. I will say that it is not as bad as you might hear me at times espouse about the Guardian Druid and how boring they are. That being said, looking at the cast that you do as a Guardian Druid might make you feel pretty bad about some of the complexities of the other tanks compared to what you're doing. But if you are someone who prefers a more simple playstyle, then Guardian Druid is certainly for you.
So the next category we've got is the Old Guard. You know these tanks, but how do they shape up in Miss of Pandaria? We've got to start with the Prot Warrior, and I played a Prot Warrior in Mogashen Vaults, and honestly, I was pretty underwhelmed. I really couldn't compete in damage or threat with the Blood DK I was grouped with. Yes, I do really love the high mobility, jumping back and forth on fights like Elegon, the Heroic Leap, the Charge, Intervene. And there's also validity to bringing a Prot Warrior for their really great utility, Skull Banner, the Rallying Cry. But then there's also the problem where you probably already have Warriors in your group, they're already bringing those things. So what do you think about Prot Warrior?
I think Prot Warrior is actually in a really good spot. They do lack some of the things that Brewmaster and Blood DK would bring in the form of keeping themselves alive, self-sustain, and whatever else. And while their damage is perhaps not the same as a Blood DK, for example, they still bring a lot of invisible damage that you're not seeing attributed to the warrior, but would not be there if they didn't use their skull banners. Of course, you already mentioned all the utility, which I think is fantastic. They have a ton of mobility. The class becomes so much more fluid. Actually having to think about like when you deal with magical damage, when you deal with physical damage, and when you can dump rage into offensive utility rather than defensive utility, brings some depth to the class that really wasn't there before in Cataclysm.
So we've also got to talk Blood DK. Every Mogashen Vaults I've done with a DK, their damage is way up there. And meanwhile, they have insane self-healing, which I think really fits the meta of having the Disc Priest really well. You could leave them in a corner on Stone Guard, and they're not just going to fall over like my warrior does. Their utility also really carries in some fights. Elegon with the anti-magic zone in the last phase is a really good example. The one negative, though, I'd say, is that their lack of mobility for challenge modes, if you're trying to push really fast times, is a problem.
Blood DKs are a little bit hated at the moment. Not because they're not good, or not because they're bad, but because they are so incredibly strong in Cataclysm, people want to see the downfall of the Blood DK. I am, however, unfortunately here to inform you that will not happen in Mists of Pandaria. 1 second GCD, no runic power cost on Dancing Rune Weapon, and no GCD on that. Bone Shield with no GCD and no cost. Your pet scaling is absolutely whack. You know, if you want to feel like you are the main character, you obviously should play a tank in Mists of Pandaria. But if you want to feel like the ultimate main character, you gotta play the Blood DK, because it is performing extremely well. And even in challenge modes, they are arguably one of the best tanks. They just do perhaps need a little bit of loving in the movement department, but there are some ways around that. It can certainly perform pretty well in there as well.
So we've also got to talk Prop Paladin, and everybody talks about how awesome Prop Paladin utility is as an off-tank. They've got the two-hand of sacrifice with the Clemency talent, so imagine putting that back-to-back on a tank. It's busted. And you can dual spec to Ret whenever you're not needed for tanking, which is great too. But most people also believe Prop Paladin is going to be way better later in Mop with their reliance on haste gear.
They are providing insane utility to the raid, especially like you were mentioning with the double sack, but also just raid-wide utility as well. They do lack in the main tank role because they do not have the amount of stats that they would need to really excel, because we're playing at a 5.4 state of the game. It is true that they are lacking quite a bit in phase 1 because of that scaling in gear. I have a sneaking suspicion that they will catch on later in the phase, possibly even towards the middle of phase 2, but time will tell.
Now it's time to rank the tanks based on desirability in raids, challenge modes, damage, utility, mitigation, the whole package. So starting with the Brewmaster, having played one in challenge modes, I really have fallen in love. I feel like they're an S tier. What do you think?
I think they're an absolute S tier when it comes to challenge modes, and that is undisputed. They're for sure going to be the kings of speed clearing challenge modes. So in that regard, yes, absolutely. In raids, however, their raid guard is providing less utility than I thought. Their healing through the orbs is way lower than we thought it was going to be as well. And their damage, especially on single target, is quite low. They are not more tanky than a lot of the other tanks. So all of those things make me want to put Brewmaster in the A tier instead of the S tier, especially when it comes to raiding.
So then we've got the Prot Warrior, and maybe my bad Mogashen Volts experience is kind of tainting this, but it feels like, to me, they're closer to like a C tier than really anything else.
I think that you might have had a little bit of a bad experience in Mogashen Vault. In the top tier of play, you will see Prot Warrior brought even in the very first raid tier as a racing pick for the top guilds. They do bring a lot to the table, and I would venture to put them in the low A tier.
Okay, I'm going to give them the lowest possible A tier based on my terrible experience.
Absolutely, we'll have to consider that as well, for sure.
So, talking Guardian Druids, apparently not your main. I was misinformed. I would say B tier, though they do have a very high skill floor, which is definitely good.
Guardian Druid, or Who Druid, struggles because they ideally want a main tank. However, the other main tank options are just so much stronger that ideally you don't want to bring a Guardian Druid, and as such, they have to be relegated to the B tier.
So we've got another one that is going to be very controversial, the Prot Paladin. Now, amazing utility, and everybody says by the end of this game, we'll probably have some Prot Paladin tanks in our raids. But right now, phase 1 at least, feels around that Feral Druid area.
I think it's pretty safe to put Prot Paladin in the B tier. The tank scaling in Mists of Pandaria is much closer than in previous expansions, so even though it's a B tier, it is not that much lower than the other tanks.
All right, now we've got my nemesis from the Mogashen Vaults, the class that does so much more damage, more threat, and they seem like they never die.
People might say that I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's undoubtedly the strongest tank in Mists of Pandaria, in the first phase, that is. The Blood DK is just smoking every tank out of the water in virtually every aspect of tanking.
All right, so if you had to pick just one tank to main during Mists of Pandaria, I think we already know the answer, but what would it be?
Yeah, it's Guardian Druid. No, I'm of course on the Blood DK train. You know, I've been the Blood DK guy in Cataclysm. They're really, really strong, and they're so fun to play, and the very fast-paced 1 second UCD playstyle is up my wheelhouse.
And if I had to pick a tank myself, it would be Brewmaster. I've fallen in love with the fast-paced rotation. It feels like it comes from a different video game. Thanks for watching this ultimate tank tier list with Riani. Make sure to check his channel out in the top right and in the description as well for all things tanking in Miss Pandaria. Smash that like button, subscribe, and like the video, and there's going to be way more mop content coming very soon.